When I was younger, I thought that I was learning game development. I'd sit there watching a 10-hour tutorial, copying the code line by line, and feeling smart because I recognized everything on the screen. But recognition is not understanding. One day, out of pure randomness, I opened Unity and just started building. It was ugly, broken, and half AI generated, but finishing something felt like turning on the lights in a dark room. And that was the moment I realized I hadn't been learning anything all this time. I'd just been watching other people learn. This video is going to be everything that I wish I could say to my younger version of myself when I first got started in learning game development. Because when I was in this tutorial hall, I was following this multiple hour Minecraft tutorial. That was the only one. I think I followed like some roguelike 2D tutorial as well. Like there was a lot. And I'd follow all these, and like internally, like if you ask me and just ask me the right questions, I would probably like realize myself that I wasn't actually learning. Because when I was actually following along and I was like doing the steps that like I saw on YouTube, like because these were like step-by-step tutorials, when I actually followed, I didn't understand what we were doing. Sure, I had a lot of recognition, like I could recognize that sure, this is going to be the movement script in our project. Sure, this is where we get the input. And like I'd recognize a lot of the different things inside of the project that we were making. And I have like a lot of recognition about the engine and the programming language, but I wouldn't have any understanding of it. So I couldn't like replicate the thing or like understand what we were going to do next because I only had recognition. I didn't have understanding. And these are two completely different things. When you're watching tutorials, the only thing they teach you is going to be recognition. Understanding comes from actually using the things actively. So it's not weird to see why I felt kind of stupid or like that coding was for me. I was like overwhelmed about why I wasn't learning. And that's like not hard to see like in retrospect because I was learning the wrong way. I only got the recognition about things, but I never got the understanding because I never built anything myself. My only source of learning was just following tutorials. Like, for example, I've baked with my girlfriend like a lot of times. And every time like I do a lot of things, like I can like weigh this, put this into this, like mash things together or whatever it might be. Like I can do these things when she tells me like what to do or like we have a recipe. But I could never do these things on myself. Like I could never do them. I wouldn't be able to do the first step. Like maybe I could put the eggs on the kitchen counter and set on the oven. That's maybe like the only thing I would remember. And that's because when we're just doing things passively, like following instructions, we are just learning to recognize it. We are not learning to understand it, so we can't use it practically. So now that you understand this, you are very, very likely asking, how do we learn instead of? And I kind of mentioned this like a little before, but to actually understand something, we need to use it practically and we need to like solve problems, and it needs to be like a little hard. We can't just follow instructions and expect to learn. We need to do something ourselves, make something ourselves. And I learned this when I made my first game. Like when I made my first game, which was like the first time that I was like tutorial independent, I learned so many different things that I would never have learned if I just watched tutorials. Like I learned so much architecture, so much programming, so much how to scale a project, like so many different things. And it's not that I just recognize them, I actually learned to understand them. So I could use these things like practically in my next project and actually improve. And the thing you need to understand is that this like building things, building games, doing experiments and prototypes, that's what we call active learning. Whilst tutorials and like watching guides, step-by-step recipes, like things like that, that's going to be what we call passive learning. That's where you are like using anything of your brain. It doesn't require anything of you. Like for example, when I was watching this Minecraft tutorial, I could do that with like 1% of my brain, literally. I didn't understand anything. I was literally just typing the things that I saw on YouTube. That was literally the only thing I did. And that's a very, very obvious like passive learning thing. But active learning, that's on the opposite side. That's where we actually do things, like I talked about. And sure, we can implement active learning into watching tutorials like passive learning with like taking notes, pausing the video and experimenting, like trying to do as much passive learning while watching the tutorial as possible. Like we can also do that. But when I learn something, what I do is that I try to experiment with that thing. I use as much knowledge as like I can. Like I try to use as much knowledge as I have as possible. And when I like are going to do something new that I haven't done before, I don't know how to do it, I just use Google. I don't ask AI, I don't watch a tutorial. What I do is I Google the specific thing. So for example, if I want to like subscribe to an event, like something like that, I know how to do it, but something simple like that. So what I'm going to do then is that I'm not going to go on YouTube and search for like an entire tutorial about how to implement like everything that I'm going to do. Like if I'm making a player movement system, I'm not going to search for like how to make a player movement system. What I'm going to do is I'm going to search for the specific thing that I struggle with. So how to subscribe to an event, like very, very specifically. So in this, there are actually two very good things that are happening. First, since I'm searching for like this very, very specific thing, I'm using as much of my internal knowledge as possible. So it sits tighter in my brain. I'm going to remember them much better, and I'm going to be able to use them more practically because I've like used it recently. So you might have heard of like spaced repetition, and that's very important to actually like not just doing something one time, but actually to improve as a game developer with having like a lot of knowledge. So the first thing is that I'm like renewing the knowledge in my brain of the things that I already know, and I'm like better at using it practically, as well as that I'm like not overwhelming myself with information. So if I were like going to search for like a huge thing, like how to make a player movement system, like I wouldn't be able to remember all of that. But if I just search for that one specific thing that I couldn't do, I could like very, very easily remember that because it's like one thing. It's literally one thing. Whilst in a player movement system, there's maybe like 100 lines of code, and I wouldn't be able to remember that. So those two things are like very good. You both renew your internal knowledge, so you can actually become a better game developer with like a lot of knowledge, as well as that you're actually going to remember and be able to use the thing that you search for practically. So as I said, when I learn something, I experiment. When I struggle with something, I search for like the specific thing on Google. And when I'm done with like the system or the script, 100%, what I'm going to do is that first I'm going to like maybe review it myself, find some flaws, and like try to be critical of my code. And obviously there's like limits to how much you can like find issues in your own code because you made it. So what I usually do is that when I'm done, I send it to AI, like ChatGPT, and I say, given the major flaws in this code, blah, blah, blah. And it's going to give me like a review of the code, things that I need to improve at, things that I need to change. And that way I'm both building, so I'm using my internal knowledge. I'm learning new things because I'm Googling these things, and I'm actually going to remember it because it's like specific things, not like huge things that I wouldn't be able to remember. As well as I'm getting feedback on the things that I am actually making. So with this system, like experiment, Google, and feedback, we're doing everything that we need to actually get better and actually learn the way that we can use these things practically. So that's awesome. That's like things that tutorials wouldn't teach you. And this system of experimenting, AI, feedback, that's everything that Smart-Indie is built upon. It's built upon active learning, and it's built upon like the learning science, not this tutorial hell where I just tell you like step by step how to make a game. Smart-Indie is the exact system that you can use to actually learn yourself and build the games that you want to make and actually learn the skills that you need to learn, as well as covering all the most common mistakes that you can make when you're releasing your first game. So if you want to learn more, then you can click the first link in the description. But you might ask now, when are we going to use tutorials then? Because obviously we can just experiment forever. And if you're a complete beginner, that's also like something else because you don't know how to experiment. So it's very important to clarify that, because when I make these videos and I don't like make it very, very clear when we're going to use tutorials, and I think I'm just saying like never use it, then I get like a lot of comments. So let's just clarify that immediately. I wanted to use tutorials as my definition is scaffolding for understanding. And like remember what we talked about, understanding, that's when you use things practically. So use tutorials only for scaffolding for understanding. And examples of that can be, for example, if you want to learn like design patterns, how you're going to architect your game better. If you want to learn like concept overviews about different things, like if you're going to learn about a new plugin or like a new system in C#, whatever it might be, something like that, you can use concept overviews for. Or it can be like under the hood stuff, like the theory about things. So for example, if you want to learn like under the hood things about like delta time, so you can use it more effectively and like actually become like a giga developer nerd and like learn things under the hood, then you can also use that. Like I like to do that as well because I think it's interesting. So you can use that as well. That's just a few quick examples. But only use tutorials as scaffolding for understanding. Don't watch more than like 20% tutorials, maybe even less. And the last thing, which is also very, very important that you understand, so don't click off now because this is so important, is that your main priority, or you can only have one priority, but that's like another thing. Your priority should be to make a game, because we are game developers, not prototype developers. So everything that you are learning right now, so your experiments and your prototypes that you're making, should have the purpose of leading you to actually making your first game. And that's going to depend on like the game that you want to make. So if you want to make like a 3D shooter game, like a simple 3D shooter game, then for example, you aren't going to make like 2D top-down moment. That's not what you're going to do. What you're going to do then is that your experiment and your prototypes, like the thing that you're actually learning before you start the development process, is going to be related to that. So you might make like a player movement system, like obviously start smaller than that, but like your goal should be like first make a player movement system in 3D. Then you can experiment with like shooting, running, crouching, so you can get practice with the things. So your first game is going to be much easier to actually finish because you already have experience with the things that you're going to make in the game. So the rule I usually use is the 80-20 rule. When you're making your first game, you should know roughly about 80% of the things that you're going to make in that game. So for example, if I were going to make like a management game with like 2D UI, I would maybe be able to do like 30% of that. Not 80%. I wouldn't have a clue about how to make the core system, about like the UI, connecting nodes, all these things. And I wouldn't be able to even get like a prototype out quickly. So especially the main mechanic, like the movement, the shooting, the health, all these things should be something that you already know, and like roughly 80% of the game in total. And 20%, that's things that you can learn while actually making the project. So just to give you like a quick estimate about how long you should like experiment and prototype before you actually make your first game, you start development. It's obviously going to depend very much on how much understanding you have and how much like knowledge you have. So I'd say maybe for you, 30 to 60 days before you make your first game. That's realistic, and then you can develop your first game. And ideally that's going to take like around 60 days as well. But if you have a clear plan, then you can obviously make this process much faster. Then you could probably like start developing your first game within like a few weeks and then finish it within only 2 months. And that's exactly why I built Smartini. That's where you get a step-by-step process about how to make your first game within only 60 days, even if you are a complete beginner, because I literally lay out step-by-step how you're going to learn, and you get all the bonus resources inside of Smartini as well, which is going to help you tons when you're making your first game. Get like a Trello template so you can stay organized, Notion template so that you like can brainstorm your ideas and it's very like organized, stuff like that. Get prototype challenges, which is like essential for learning. And I'm also like trying to improve Smartini like always. So if there's something new that comes, then obviously you get it completely at no extra cost. So if that sounded interesting to you, then you can click the first link in the description. But anyways, I want to say thank you for watching this video.